A biblical perspective on life, culture, and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
An area of our lives that most of us don't like to think about is the fact that, as well as life, we are also promised death. And a new documentary has been made documenting people's near-death experiences, which can help shine light for all of us on what actually happens when we pass from this life to the next. Director Stephen Gray joins us today, who has made this documentary, and we welcome him to 2020 today. Stephen, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here.
Great to have you, my friend. Tell us about the new documentary that you've made.
Yeah, so After Death is a feature-length documentary that asks the question, what happens after we die? And we explore it from doctors and scientists, as well as survivors who've had these profound experiences at the moment when they were clinically dead and came back to talk about it. So in the film, we actually have 14 different people who clinically died, which means that they had no brain activity, their heart had stopped, and there was no breathing. And they were dead between seconds to an hour and 45 minutes in the film. And so, yeah, we just explore what happens after.
14 different people. That's a lot of people. What motivated you to want to make a documentary about this?
So I come from a Christian background. I grew up going to church all my life. And in 2012, my brother-in-law was actually tragically killed in a car wreck. He was 36 years old, here one moment and gone the next. And that kind of caused me to ask, deep questions about, is what I was raised to believe true? Is there really a heaven? Where is he now? And I wasn't really sure if I believed. It just going through like really traumatic pain at that point, asking those questions. And so as I was asking those questions, some people recommended reading these books of people who've had these, profound experiences at clinical death. I wasn't sure really what to make of it at first. I wasn't hooked initially, but after I did get to hear one person's account, I was hooked. And after I think 30 different books of people's stories, there was something really interesting about all these different people with very different backgrounds and how so many aspects of their story paralleled. And there was a lot of overlap and seemingly between these people that didn't know each other. So then I just kind of thought, I feel like this would make a really interesting, compelling documentary.
Yeah, and did hearing these people's stories do something to your own personal faith?
It did, yeah. It really it helped sort of me with the grieving process, my family with the grieving process, and it just encouraged and renewed my faith. So I think for a while I wasn't really reading the Bible, and I honestly didn't have much of a prayer life. But after hearing of these accounts, it was just like, oh my goodness, this is real. This spiritual dimension, this other dimension after physical death is real. There's 4,000 accounts of people. One study looked into 4,000 accounts of clinical death around the globe. Completely different cultures, different regions around the world, and people were having these profound experiences again that many aspects overlap. And so for me, it just kind of pointed to there is this ultimate reality of something after. And it just kind of pointed me back to the Bible. Everything was pointing me back to the Bible. I think there was something so interesting about this. There is, many aspects in Scripture paralleled what these people were describing. Not everyone had words for, like they can't contextualize, what they saw. Some people didn't necessarily weren't raised in a faith to believe in the afterlife, or they didn't come from a Christian background. But they did end up there after, kind of a journey. Initially, they were shocked. What I experienced was nothing like what I thought, actually happens. And then after some time, they come upon the Bible, which is full of interesting kind of spiritual language and parallels to exactly what they had experienced. So for me, it was just something profoundly impacting.
Yeah, well, it is. It's amazing. But I'm just now wondering, what's the next step? Like, how do you go from finding these stories and being impacted by them to actually making a documentary?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly daunting to make a film that feels personal with these accounts, but also to kind of venture into something that we can't we can't bring cameras and show, right? We have no real references for this heavenly encounter, this otherworldly kind of place. And so best we can do is just kind of go. I was inspired by the nature that's around us. The world is full of incredible landscapes and beauty in creation. And then there's also this heavenly landscape, basically a landscape before us in the night sky every night. If it's a cloudless night, you can see well into these galaxies and star systems above us. And there's something so mysterious and interesting about that. So we kind of married the visuals of the cosmos that's up there, as well as grounding it with some aspects of nature that we see here on Earth. And so we did as best as we could to kind of bring people into what these people were describing and experiencing after death.
Yeah, and what about the practical logistics? Have you made documentaries before? Was this your first documentary? Tell us about that.
Sure. I mean, I come from the commercial space up here in Canada. Most of my work has been in commercial filmmaking. So it's very different than television or feature films. And this is actually my first feature film. So it's daunting. It took many years to kind of put together. I think it started, the initial idea all the way to the final thing was about 7-year journey. And we were 3 years in production on the feature length. So it's a lot of hard work to make a film, and but we're proud of what we put together.
Well, I bet you are. I mean, 7 years, that's a long time, and respect to you for persevering and seeing the project through. There must be a great sense of satisfaction now that it actually is done.
Yeah, it's this really interesting feeling, because it's both. Yeah, it's like it feels great that it's done, and especially that it's out there. The biggest thing is that it's finished, and it's going to be playing in theaters, out there, and hearing from audiences that get to watch it. Right, it leaves me and the hardworking team that made this film, and it becomes something else when people are watching and experiencing it. But it's also it's difficult to release it, because then it's finished, right? And it's like, what's next?
Well, okay, let me ask you, in your best case scenario, you call it a dream or a vision or a desire in your heart right now, what do you hope happens as a consequence of this documentary, say in the next 12 to 24 months' time? What is your dream?
I mean, honestly, the dream has always been for this film to have impact on lives. And we've heard from so many people in North America where it has met them with that. People that are sharing, some basically really dark moments that they've had in their lives, going through loss, going through pain, asking really difficult questions. And this film has helped sort of steer them towards hope. And that's kind of been the desire of the film since the beginning, that this film would kind of open the doors for hope. So we made this film intentionally because this is a question, what happens after death for everyone. People outside of the faith, people within the faith. There's many people who came and watched the film who hadn't considered a spiritual reality at all. They were invited by friends. And because the film kind of meets a skeptical perspective as well, we don't take everything at face value. I think this film allows many to come to the table and kind of begin to ask those questions and have really profound conversation after. So yeah, after it plays in theaters out there, I guess my hope is that it's begun to transform lives. And that's not me doing that. It's not the filmmakers doing that. We do the best we can to make something entertaining and encouraging and visually, interesting. But it's really these people's stories that I think are going to impact people. And that's just kind of the work of God.
Yeah. And look, everyone loves a good story. I think, just as an outsider watching Hollywood, like for the last 10 or 15 years, they've really struggled to tell stories in their movies. And I know a lot of people like myself that just sort of switched off Hollywood the last few years because they just seem to ruin good stories. And I think everyone loves a good story. And it sounds like your documentary's got 14 fantastic stories of different individuals who've had this near-death experience. So let me ask you, in the 7-year journey, what was the biggest challenge or the most difficult thing in that 7 years to make this documentary happen?
Well, again, I think because just the nature of going into kind of a spiritual territory, visually showing any of that, and then even just, editing math, like thinking about how to edit it together, 14 different people's stories and interweaving it to cohesively and all that kind of stuff. There was so many daunting aspects to the film. I think there were some surprises along the way in their stories that were, challenging and encouraging kind of all at the same time. I kind of had preconceived notions of, what heaven would be, what that might look like and be as it may be experienced. And a lot of these people kind of describe, other senses and things like that we can't really relate to here on Earth. We have the senses that we have, but there they say they have like 50 senses. Their vision is completely different. Most people describe this 360 degree vision, where they can, without turning their head, they can see almost completely around them. A wide perspective, as well as similar to like what would be like a zoom lens, so they can see really far away, extreme detail, up close, close something written on a wall, but also take in an entire city in terms of visual landscape all at the same time. It's really hard to understand that because we don't experience this world here like that. So it's like this different dimension, right? In the film, John Burke, who wrote the book Imagine Heaven, he kind of articulates it as we're sort of living here. It's as if we're living on a 2D black and white plane here. And this is the Earth and the experience that we have as people here. When you die, you're ripped off that plane and you're brought into this 3-dimensional, colorful other reality. You're taking in all this beauty and with these different senses. And now you are going to be going back to that 2D flat black and white world. Like, how would you describe it? And so many of these people who've had this experience, they're challenged with, I don't have words to describe what I experience, and words won't do it justice. When we get to talking about God, the light and the love of God, I mean, people are trembling and they're sobbing and they don't have words to describe. But I think that's kind of well articulated in the Bible, right? Like we don't have words to describe the beauty and the majesty and the mystery of God in heaven. So yeah, anyways, it was quite a journey to put the film together.
Well, it sounds really interesting, and you've made me want to watch it. So for our Australian audiences, tell us about the distribution. How is a person in Australia going to be able to watch this documentary?
So it's going to be playing 3 different dates starting May 15th. And so, definitely it's the best thing you can do is come out and watch it, especially on opening day on May 15th. Bring your friends, bring your family. If you have if you have a Christian background or have a faith background, my encouragement to you is to bring friends and family, those who don't share necessarily that background or are questioning it, or maybe have some doubt has creeped into their life, because this film, I think, is going to offer a tremendous amount of hope, and it's going to really crack open the door for conversation. This film really kind of opens the door for conversation like nothing else in terms of like media. It's the perfect thing to kind of beginning to have that conversation. I had many conversations with neighbors and friends here, atheists and agnostic, who have considered a different perspective and considered maybe this is all true, because there's a lot that's hard to ignore in the film. Yeah.
Tell us the full name of the film again, of the documentary.
So the film is called After Death.
After Death. Sounds like a really good documentary. And Stephen, well done on producing this and directing this and just really seeing this come to fruition. And I'm personally looking forward to watching it. I know many of our audience will do the same. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on 2020 Today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.
And in Australia, we can watch that on Stan, Netflix, Apple TV, Disney, Paramount, and on Binge.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.